everyone, and welcome to today's Way Forward Workshop Leader Lunch Break. We are thrilled to welcome Charmaine Rice and Matt Fieldman. I'm going to ask you to stop for a minute and think of what our community would look like if we sought to understand rather than to be understood. At a time when anti-Semitism and racism far too often dominate our headlines, Rekindle is a daring initiative to unite individuals and communities. The passions of today's leaders, Charmaine and Matt, is in creating meaningful social change. They do so by bringing rising leaders from the Black and Jewish communities together for open dialogue, and they forge new friendships and collaborations. The goal? To accelerate social change and increase equity. So how did they get there? Well, Charmaine serves as the Senior Vice President for Global Learning, Development, and Diversity at AmTrust Financial Services. She describes herself as a people-focused consultant, facilitator, and thought partner. She serves to guide leaders through her work with heart-to-heart leadership in Akron and her presentations to the Leadership Center's Cleveland Bridge Builder programs. She's dedicated to addressing unconscious bias and encouraging authentic communication across cultures. She serves in the Cleveland chapter of NAAIA, the Elimination of Prejudice Foundation, and RISE Professionals. As for Matt, he serves as the Executive Director of America Works within Magnet, the Manufacturing Advocacy Growth Network. His challenge is to improve connectivity, effectiveness, and efficiency of America's advanced manufacturing workforce development efforts. He previously served as the Vice President of External Affairs at Magnet. He's a social change agent by heart. He's the founding board president of Edwin's Leadership and Restaurant Institute and the founder of Cleveland Codes, one of the nation's first nonprofit software boot camps, and the winner of the first Accelerate in 2015. And of course, they're both Cleveland Bridge Builders alum. Charmaine and Matt, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. It's just always fun to spotlight a Cleveland success story. So here is that story, and we're excited to share it with you. So wanted to start by talking about the origins of where we came from, and let's see. So many of you know that, well, for me, growing up in Orlando, Florida, a young Jewish kid, I grew up with this image. This is Martin Luther King and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel walking together in the fight for civil rights. And growing up and then coming to Cleveland, where that fight is still ongoing every day, it became clear to me, where are the color pictures? Why isn't there more Black Jewish collaboration today? And as Marianne mentioned, I helped start Edwin's Restaurant. At Magnet, we started the early college, early career youth manufacturing apprenticeship program, and Cleveland Codes, which was really launched by Accelerate. It was just an idea, and then I had to actually make it happen because I won that competition. But it became very clear that we needed more bridges between the two communities, and that too often the communities are working in parallel rather than in partnership. And I could be that bridge because I was active in both. And so I started talking about the idea of creating a Black Jewish dialogue, did some research nationally to see if there was anything out there already. Unfortunately, there wasn't. And just started talking about how important it was to find a co-founder. I really needed to, it needed to come from both communities. And so this was where I was in late 2019 when the idea was there, but I didn't have the partnership yet to do it.
So fortunately for us, a mutual acquaintance, Matt's wife, Allison, and I met through a CLC program. So Cleveland Bridge Builders, class of 2020, best class ever. Allison and I had the very amazing opportunity to be partnered together on a leadership action project. And in the true sense of truly building connection and building network, Allison and Matt opened up their home to our project team for a Shabbat dinner. And we were able to sit at the table, learn a little bit more from a cultural perspective about our respective backgrounds. And in that moment, I had an aha. My 75-year-old at the time, mother-in-law, joined me for that dinner. And I was blown away by how many questions she asked, how patient Matt and Allison and some of the other Jewish individuals that were around the table were in responding to those questions. And then it just clicked. Matt had an idea for Rekindle. He presented it to me for feedback. That's what I do by day. And from there, he invited me in to partner, and that was all she wrote. So because Marianne did such a great job of kind of going through our bios, I think we got the squirming out of the way. We can go ahead and move into really what is Rekindle all about. And so Matt, you covered a little bit about this, but let's go back to when this was just an idea that you had. Tell us why Rekindle and why now?
Absolutely. So especially coming out of the pandemic, we desperately need new platforms for connection. Social media, if it's proven anything, it's proven that it reinforces our bubbles. So I just felt like you need to get in the same room and actually work together. And again, as Marianne said, we both fight hate. We both both communities are experiencing unprecedented levels of bigotry and discrimination. And we need this reciprocal activism where we partner with each other and work together. And my experience in Cleveland is bringing good people together makes good things happen. That's very much my experience with Bridge Builders and class of 2010, also the best class ever, and all the other different fellowships that I've been a part of. And then finally, similar to the March on Washington, where not many people know this, but the speaker before Martin Luther King and his famous I Have a Dream speech was Rabbi Joachim Prince from New Jersey, where Charmaine is right now. So we need a national network of Black and Jewish change makers. We need another March on Washington. We need a collaboration truly nationally. Interestingly enough, the 60th anniversary of that march is coming up in August, and there will be some really nice collaborations going on. But that's why we desperately need Rekindle here in Cleveland and nationally.
We also need individuals who are forward thinking. And so Matt mentioned connection and community as critical aspects to change agency post-pandemic. But this initiative actually started before the pandemic. And it started because what we recognize is so many of us have these relationships where we exist within our bubble. We don't spend a lot of time connecting with folks who are different than us in terms of the way that they look, the way that they love, race, ethnicity, religion, etc. So many aspects of our social diversity. We tend to stay within groups that are like us. And so the goals of Rekindle are simply to build bridges, finding ways to connect across the Black and Jewish community in particular, inspiring impact, looking to plant seeds. And so none of this matters if we're not taking it forward and planting those seeds under which others can enjoy the shade. What are we doing to set ourselves up for continued success in the future and being forward thinking as Matt was initially? And then I'm excited to say that there has been a lot of work done by my counterpart in the space of scaling nationally. And this is something that is needed not just in Northeast Ohio, but in so many communities around the globe. And Matt has done a great job with building in the United States.
Yeah, and I just felt from the very beginning that if Charmaine and I had to build this from the ground up, no one else ever should. So let's create something that's free, that's accessible, and meant to scale nationally. So I always like to be very clear about what we are and aren't. We're not a class, we're a community. When you join Rekindle, you join a community of Black and Jewish change makers. And we're not a program, we are a platform. We're a platform for connection, we're a platform for taking your ideas and accelerating them. So we're not just a discussion group, we're not a DEI 101 course. There's a lot of those out there. Many of you have gone through those trainings. They're great. There's a million podcasts and books. Go do those and then come here. And frankly, we're not going to fix racism and anti-Semitism in 12 hours. So just want to manage expectations. But what we are going to do is create new connections. I like to say for a lot of the participants, particularly the white Jewish participants, they walk away with their first Black friends, or at least friends number 2, 3, and 4, And so creating those connections is really meaningful for a lot of the participants. It's an opportunity to learn, and it's a launching point for action. When I was doing the research around this and asking local friends, many of whom I knew through the Leadership Center, would you come and be a part of this? They said, yeah, but only if it leads to action. We don't need another book club. We don't need another discussion group. We actually really need a place to accelerate impact. And so that has been a major focus, and we'll talk about that shortly.
So when we think about the curriculum right now, as the program currently exists, Rekindle Phase 1 includes 4 formal sessions where the entire group is together. And we start with getting to know ourselves and getting to know each other. So really discussing Black Jewish history, intergenerational trauma. Then we move into session 2, where we really start to explore, what does faith look like in our respective lives? How does it show up? And understanding that neither group is a monolith, right? The responses vary around the table. We start to look for intersectionalities in places where our communities overlap. And then we also launch a Rekindle Action Project. It may sound familiar to anyone here who is a CLC alum, but definitely a very great vehicle for bringing folks together in the spirit of action. In session 3, we have a discussion with guests that are Jews of color. We talk a little bit more in depth about the Black experience, and we have a very riveting session where individuals are invited to ask their counterparts around the table anything. And then finally, session 4, thinking about next steps of our action project, we actually read and reflect on Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail to inspire us to consider that every ending is actually a beginning to something new. And so thinking about that cycle of experience, what are we going to do now with the information that we've learned? We know that it's important to celebrate our achievements along the way. So we also have a graduation. And I don't think that we've said this up to this point, but I definitely want to give gratitude to so many of our partners in the community, in particular Edwin's. Edwin's does host the majority of our sessions. We've actually done some ancillary workshops there as well, breakfast, brunch meetings, et cetera. And so we utilize their space when they're closed, but they also provide food for our sessions, thinking back to that initial Shabbat dinner with Matt and family, and how nice that was to be able to sit and enjoy a meal together.
So let's dive into the Rekindle Action Project. I'm gonna butcher this phrase, but what's the duplication is the highest form of flattery, something like that. Someone write the right phrase in the chat. I can't remember, but we wanted to create an action project. We absolutely, learned a lot from our lab team experiences and tried to distill them into something much, much smaller. We're talking about, these are more like 60 days. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Thank you, Aaron. We want to do something small, impactful, and quick, with the idea that movements are started with lots of small actions, and little actions grow, and creating these relationships. So we want to deepen these individual bonds, create working relationships, and get a taste of working together, with the idea that people can either continue that same project, they can meet new people and launch different projects, et cetera. But some examples are this breakfast that shared the policing reform program run by Joe Black, who was in our first cohort, the reverse ride-along program that is really making a difference for for strengthening the relationship between the police and the communities. We've got the social media campaign that promoted early voting, a neighborhood cleanup project in the Buckeye neighborhood, volunteering with Anita Gardner's C4 organization to help their holiday food and coat drive. Most recently, there was a Black Jewish history tour of Cleveland. And then there was a different group that did a non-traditional Seder combined with a traditional Sunday dinner. And so just, again, connecting, you can see lots of different themes: volunteering, education, social. The idea is pick something, do it, pick something that works for you, and Rekindle will even fund it, which is an important piece of the puzzle.
For the more than 80 fellows that we've had up to this point in 6 cohorts, the 7th cohort is launching soon, and you'll hear more about that in just a moment. More than 90% of them walk away from the program saying that they feel more connected, and 95% would recommend and do recommend program participation to their friends, to their spouses. Matt and I are walking the talk. Both of our significant others have completed the program as well. But what we always say is you get out of the experience what you put into it. And so what really makes my heart do a cartwheel is the alumni who have raised their hands to serve as moderators of this content, allowing Matt and I to situationally take a step back, but really to also see the program continue to grow and scale. Many of the initiatives that Matt referenced, as well as so many of our alumni events, are actually presented by alumni. And so these are their ideas, and it's so nice to be able to support that, because just quite honestly, I'm not that creative. And so to be able to hear from others in terms of ideas, in terms of how we can continue to innovate and how we can drive things forward, they're just remarkable. Matt has already mentioned the collaboration grants, and then we do have future activities to scale that are planned, including a bus trip in spring of 2024. And more recently, I think I also saw a comment in the chat about this with a little bit more urgency. We have the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington at the end of August. And we'll be circulating information out to our Rekindle alumni in terms of how they may be able to get involved with that.
Great. Let me just go back a little bit. Alumni engagement is really important. So as Charmaine mentioned, we're at 88 alumni. So we have regular get-togethers. We partnered with the Federation on their Good Deeds Day. We have barbecues. We worked with the Kids Book Bank to sort books. This was an alumni collaboration grant. That's Rabbi Lauren Werber and Frank Whitfield, the mayor of Elyria. She's the rabbi in Elyria. And they got together and said, let's bring this Black Jewish band called the Afro-Semitic Experience to our town. And so that's what they did. And we were able to help fund it. And again, we're able to help make these collaborations happen. National expansion, let me just mention, other communities really want this. I mean, this is a need, this is a desire. And so we have chapters in formation or running in 4 different places. 2 in New Jersey, Omaha, Nebraska, and Rochester are launching right now. And we have conversations in progress with 20 other communities. I received a generous grant to help subsidize the launch of Rekindle chapters outside of Cleveland. So, this is growing, and this is a really interesting point in our development because we may get quite a few more chapters running. Again, the curriculum is free. Locally, some organization will raise their hand and say, hey, we'll put in the staff time. And there's just this playbook that you can bring to your community, and that helps you with recruitment and running it and alumni engagement and all the different pieces that it takes to have a successful chapter.
When we think about our impact thus far, I won't read through this slide, but just know that we survey our alumni 6 months after completion of the program. So our first 5 cohorts, their responses are reflected here. One of the things that we celebrate, first of all, is 100% response rate, which where does that happen for the first 5 cohorts? And what we can see is that most folks either agree or strongly agree that they've developed new relationships, that they've connected with the other community in new ways, and that they've both advocated for and continued to challenge their own biases as well as the biases of others as a result of their experience.
All right, so wrapping up, how you can help. Hopefully you're motivated at this point. You're excited. So here's how you can help. So first of all, we're always looking for partner organizations locally, nationally. Whoever needs to know about this organization, please let them know. I will Zoom with anyone at any time to talk it up. Our deadline for applications for our 7th cohort that launch in late September is tomorrow. So we plan this strategically. So if you know anybody that should join, let them know. Again, it's not a long application. They can fill it out anytime today or tomorrow. And then you can always join our email list, learn more. We send regular updates at rekindlefellowship.org. And then we're always looking for national publicity so more communities will know about this, raise their hand, reach out and say, hey, we'd like to bring it to our area. And so if you have PR experience and want to help pitch this to any sort of publication nationally, we are always open to that. That's kind of the end of our formal presentation. We're happy to take questions. I just wanted to share finally some social media that people have shared about how excited they are to be part of Rekindle and the impact on their lives. So with that, Rachel, take it away.
Matt and Charmaine, thank you so much. It's phenomenal work that you are doing here in our community. One of the questions that did come in is currently it looks like the program is just for adults. Are there opportunities for high school and middle school students to participate in something like this, or maybe down the road in a program like this?
We've done a little bit of student engagement, a few programs here and there. In terms of a formal Rekindle, there are discussions about creating something specifically for teens, but it's probably a future action project. What does a future teen program look like? Who would the partners be? How would we fund it? Those sort of things. So that'd be a cool wrap project, or even a lap project maybe someday.
So thinking about taking the risk and starting something new, for many that can feel really overwhelming. So can you share some experiences and some lessons, some insights that the two of you had in kind of overcoming some of those fears potentially of how did you take this risk to start something?
So I'm going to butcher a quote now, and that's to say that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the single step, right? I think so many of us do find ourselves in spaces where we do feel very busy. We're connected in so many different ways to other organizations. We've got our own mental well-being as well as that of our friends and families to support, and day jobs, right? But when we think about really truly wanting to see positive action in our community, it starts with each of us individually. So Rachel, going back to the question in terms of where do we begin? How do we know where to start? I think it starts exactly as the example that we provided with Rekindle. It starts with reaching out to a friend or a new acquaintance, inviting them to come in, to take a seat, to ask questions, and creating that safe space to be able to listen and share. And then from there, deciding how do we want to see this grow? And what type of support do we need to really allow ourselves an opportunity to invite others in? I think scaling thoughtfully is also very important. It's easy to say that, you know, we would love to see 1,000 Rekindle Fellows, and I'm confident that we will, but thinking about it in a way that is meaningful and value added, it starts with a small group, and then we continue to see growth from there.
I would just add, you know, I really congratulate and thank the Rekindle Fellows for taking this step through, in many cases, a fellowship they knew very, very little about, and you know, commitment that they they say all the time, I had no idea what I was getting into going into this, and I'm really glad. But they often say, almost always, they say, I'm really glad I did. And sometimes they even take, you know, kind of get weird glances from their own communities. Why are you engaging with the other? What do they have to offer? You know, aren't there tensions here? Shouldn't we be, you know, not in talking with them? And so that is even more a reason to come into the room, because, you know, what do you have to lose, first of all? But really, it's about creating conversations and new relationships and new understandings. And as Marianne started with, seeking to understand and then seeking to be understood. And so we really look forward to breaking down that barrier and getting people interested and engaged with the other.
So in thinking about the need for this program, do you see this as a model that could be replicated in other communities that need to forge better bonds? And do you see this in our community being able to expand beyond the Black and Jewish communities?
Certainly, expanding nationally is, you know, a major goal of ours, and we're in progress. In terms of expanding to other communities, I'm not an expert on the other pieces and what it would take. So I would look to other communities that want to do such a thing and ask them, you know, what could that partnership look like? Yeah.
So as you've gone through this experience, what has been some of the things that have surprised you along the way of launching a new program?
I would definitely say just our own individual ahas. Some of the things that we talk about as it pertains to social identity, some of the labels, the stereotypes that we put on ourselves, as well as some of those that others may have heard or experienced or endured over time. One of the things that we often say while we're seated around the table is this is not the oppression Olympics, right? We're not trying to compare pain to see who wins the trophy at the end of it, but rather we're trying to listen and to understand. To Matt's earlier point, one of the things that the biggest surprise that I have had is the willingness of folks to roll up their sleeves, to sit at the table, to become comfortable being uncomfortable, to share some of the things that they've realized throughout these dialogues, and to then say, okay, we've talked about the what, now I want to be part of the now what. And so that's been the biggest surprise for me, is just reflecting with gratitude on our alumni and their willingness to share openly and their desire to act, and in some cases wanting to push further than where we currently are able to support at the present time, but thinking about what that might look like over time. Matt, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I always thought recruitment was going to be the hardest part. That who would want to do this? This seems like just one more thing on your already busy schedules. And surprisingly, recruitment's been our easiest thing. Kind of to Laura's point, people are really hungry to share and communicate and meet people outside their bubbles and learn new things. And so I underestimated the demand for this. And what's really fascinating, and it's happened in all 6 cohorts to date, is by the end of the first session, people are incredibly vulnerable. They've opened up, they've shared things they've maybe even never said before. And it's really gratifying, and has allowed us to be really genuine and authentic in our interactions, because we set a stage for, first of all, everything that's said here is confidential, that we call in rather than call out, that we're here to learn and grow and not judge. But so we create an environment where people can really be their authentic selves, and that's been very powerful.
Rachel, I think I saw a question in the chat too from a friend of CLC and a personal friend of mine as well. How do non-participants learn about Rekindle's achievements, celebration needs, and projects? We don't currently have an annual report. What we do have is a rather amazing and very detailed list that we publish of all of our activities. So there is a email list, and I'll drop a link in the chat for that. And we do have a strategic board meeting coming up for some of our alumni, and we'll be planning next steps. And so an annual report might be one of those considerations that the group takes into account.
So as you reflect on the past few years, what has been one of the major challenges you've had to overcome to reach where you are right now with the program?
Wow. I would say that the Kyrie and Kanye controversies, I'm going to forget how long ago this was, 6 months ago, a year ago, I forget. Time is a blur, but I would say those were really interesting, challenging times. The reason being, they really, exposed some rifts, or attempted to create rifts between the two communities. The way we responded was really, I think, fabulous, which was, we have a very active WhatsApp social media group of our alumni, and people were sharing and talking and sharing their experiences and their impressions. And so I felt like that was a really good response to what was a very challenging time.
For me, I would say time. So I have a fear of missing out. And one of the things that I've committed to in 2023 is replacing that with the joy of missing out. So I mentioned earlier, we've got so many of our alumni who've raised their hands to be moderators. So allowing me to get out of the way, allowing them to actually be able to sit at the table has been amazing. But time is definitely something that, it would be great to have a little bit more time to process through so many of the ideas and suggestions that are presented.
We have time for one last question. For those of us here on the call, how can we best support you in the work of the Rekindle Fellowship?
So that's an amazing...
Talk it up. Go ahead. For me, it's talk it up. Just share. This is exciting. You can talk about it with your people, with your people here in Cleveland. You can talk about it with relatives outside of Cleveland and be like, "This is really cool thing going on." And then of course apply. If you're part of either the Jewish community or the Black community, apply. Be a part of it.
Ditto. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Right. Well, Matt and Charmaine, thank you so very much, not just for the half hour that you gave us today, but for what you're giving every single day that enriches not just the Black and Jewish communities, but all of Cleveland's communities. And to think it all began at a Shabbat dinner with bridge builders. Of course, we love to hear that. Thank you for that.